Students, this is video 22. So today we will be dealing about renal cancer, the benign as well as the malignant cancer. So beginning with renal cancer, we are going to see about benign. Okay, so benign kidney tumors are very rare. At least 85% of all the renal tumors are malignant. So mostly it is malignant, and about 12,890 people have died because of kidney cancer. Every year when you see, this is almost the average of 12,890 people who have died, common in people among the age group of 50 to 70 years of age. Next, talking about the definition. So renal cancer can be defined as formation of benign kidney tumor. So we are dealing with benign first. So classification under that, if you see in your notes, first one is not there, please strike out, and instead of that you can write as Wilms tumor. So here we see that 1% of the population are affected with this renal tumor. Then you have lipoma. So this is a fat lump which is found between the skin in the kidney. It is very slow growing and usually it is harmless, and rarely it becomes cancerous, which is the malignant. Then if you see third one, medullary fibroma. So this is a fibroma, okay, which is formed in the renal medulla. So in the renal medulla, this tumor you can see adenoma. When we say adenoma, it affects the glandular tissue in the epithelial cells, okay, or the tissue, glandular structure in epithelial tissue. Next you have leiomyoma. So this is the fibroid, okay, so fibroid or the tumor which is formed, and they say about 0.1% of this leads to cancerous, it becomes malignant. Then you have oncocytoma. So this tumor is made up of oncocytes, epithelial cells characterized by excessive amount of mitochondria. So in oncocytoma, you see that it affects mainly the mitochondrial cells. Okay, so these are the various classifications of renal tumor or the renal cancer. Next we will go to etiology and risk factors. So first one is idiopathy. Okay, and there is a spelling mistake in your note. It is IDIO. Idiopathy means unknown. Next, it can be because of the certain exposure to lead, cadmium and phosphate chemicals. Okay, and increase, these could be a cause of which increases the renal risk of developing renal cancer. Next you have smoking, alcohol, hypertension and obesity. So these are the various etiological factors and risk factors which can cause to renal cancer. Next we will go to pathophysiology. So in the pathophysiology we see that renal cell carcinoma or the adenocarcinoma, it accounts for 90% of all kidney cancer. So when we say all kidney cancer, we see that renal cell carcinoma, which is also called as adenocarcinoma. Already we have seen adenoma, right? Glandular structure in the epithelial tissue gets affected. Okay, so the epithelial tissue or the glandular structure in the kidney gets affected, and this is the most prevalent of all the kidney cancer. So tumor growth begins in renal cortex. So we know the structure of the kidney. So in the renal cortex, what is happening? The tumor begins to grow. Then tumor can grow very large in the cortex, and it tends to compress the adjacent renal parenchyma rather than infiltrate it. So when it grows into the tissues of the kidney, automatically what happens is it starts compressing the other adjacent tissue, okay, rather than infiltrating it. So this leads to the constriction of the surrounding blood vessel. So because of this tumor, automatically the size of the kidney also will increase, and thereby it also compresses the other blood vessels which are surrounding the kidney, okay, and then it leads to liver, bone, skin, spleen, renal vein and brain. Also this kidney can be spread. Okay, so this become the major sites of metastasis. Okay, so because of this growing tumor, it compresses. Okay, it is the adenocarcinoma which is most prevalent, and it grows in the renal cortex. As it grows, it becomes large and it tends to compress the adjacent renal parenchyma. The other tissues also get compressed, and we also see the blood vessels get compressed. Okay, and it can also, if it is malignant, then it can lead to metastasis to other adjacent body parts like bone, liver, spleen, skin, renal vein and brain are also the sites of metastasis. Next we will go to stage of development. We will see how it develops: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. So this you have to write under the pathophysiology. So normal formation of tumor, when you see, okay, small stone form in the renal capsule, tumor confined with in renal capsule. So when you say normal, it is like very small, like a stone, it is formed in the renal capsule, that is a covering of the kidney. Then in the stage 2, you see that this tumor extend below the renal capsule to invade local perinephric fat. It is not metastasis. In this stage, it is not metastatic, but what does it do? It invades into the local, from the capsule, it invades into the local perinephric fat. Now, what is this perinephric fat? It is the appearance of edema with the fat of perirenal space on CT MRI. So when we visualize it on CT or MRI, we will see that it is the edema with the fat. Okay, it forms like a edema with the fat in the perirenal space. Okay, so it extends to the perirenal space. No, it is not metastatic in this stage. Next we go to see that in stage 3, tumor extends into the renal vein, involves a local lymphatic. So here when we say lymphatic, it is it enters into the lymph. Okay, so the lymphatic system gets affected. Tumor extend into the renal vein and it involves the local lymphatic. So first we'll see renal capsule. From renal capsule it invades into the perinephric space. Okay, so it is edema of fat which is found in the perirenal space. Thirdly, it affects the lymph. So once when it enters into the lymphatic, we obviously know that in the stage 4 it enters through the blood. Okay, it spreads through blood and affect other organs like kidney, lungs, spleen, bone, skin, etc. So these are the 4 stages of renal cancer. Okay, next we will go to clinical manifestation. So when we see in clinical manifestation, it's common triad. Okay, so you can see all these. Okay, a palpable abdominal mass. So when you palpate, you will see a mass. Okay, and then hematuria, blood in the urine, onset of pain, flank pain, CVA pain. Right, the patient will have, then the patient will exhibit with fever, weight loss will be there. Then cachexia. What is cachexia? Patient will be having weight loss and muscle wasting will be seen in the patient. Fatigue will be there, tiredness, then hypertension will be there. Anything that is related, disease related with the kidney, it is always associated with the heart, which will lead to hypertension. Then amyloidosis, already we have seen, it is an abnormal protein that is usually produced in the bone marrow and can be deposited at any tissue or organ. So abnormal deposition of this protein is called as amyloidosis. Okay, then you have thrombophlebitis, it is the inflammation of the vein. Anemia, okay, anemia. Then erythrocytosis, here we see that, in erythrocytosis, the blood RBC blood cells increases. Okay, obviously it is the immature RBC. Then abnormal serum liver profile. So when we say liver profile, why we have to check with the liver profile is, so this test like you have, okay, aniline transminase, ALT, aspirate aminotransferase, AST, alkaline phosphatase, ALP, okay, albumin bilirubin test. So these are all the various tests that is performed under the liver profile, and we see that these tests will show how well the liver is functioning. So usually the liver will be able to segregate the metabolic waste products, right, chemicals like that. It will make sure that all the harmful products during the metabolism is removed. That is a function of the liver. So to check the functioning of the liver, we have to check and see if all these profiles are normal. So these profiles will show how well the liver is functioning, and these are also secreted in the liver. Okay, alanine transminase, ALT, aspirate aminotransferase, AST, alkaline phosphatase, ALP, albumin, and then bilirubin test. ALT, AST, ALP, albumin and bilirubin test. Okay, and then we can see that elevated ESR will be increased. So these are all the various clinical manifestation. Next we will go to diagnostic findings. So physical examination, history collection has to be done, and then intravenous pyelogram already we have studied. Okay, here the contrast is given and then imaging is done to visualize the renal pelvis and ureter for identifying the space occupying lesion. So they will see in the renal pelvis or in the ureter, if there is any mass. And then ultrasonography should be done to find a cyst from a solid mass. So cyst is something which is a sac, right? We have seen that the covering of it is mostly found on the membrane of the kidney. So it is a sac which will be filled with fluid. So we should see if it is a cyst or if it is a solid mass. Then you have CT scan should be done. Nephrotomography is also a test where they will give the chemicals, that is the they will inject like pyelogram, they will inject the contrast and imaging will be done. This is also used to differentiate between the renal cyst and from neoplasm, if it is the cancer tumor present or is it only the sac filled cavity. So that will be checked with nephrotomography. So it would evaluate the radioisotope studies. Okay, so radioisotope also can be injected. Okay, then arteriography, visualization of the renal arteries and renal vascular system also is done. Okay, next you have the renal biopsy. Okay, when we do the renal biopsy, we will know to get about the cell. Okay, if it is cancerous or if it is tumor, okay, benign. Okay, and then we will get to know about the lesion. So these are the various diagnostic finding. Next we will go to medical management. So in the medical management we have radiation therapy. So it is used an adjuvant with chemotherapy and surgery chemotherapy. So when we say adjuvant, it is the after initial treatment for cancer, especially to suppress. So what they will do, once when there is a cancer, they will be treating with the chemotherapy, right? Then they will make sure that secondary therapy is also given so that the tumor will suppress. So here they give chemotherapy and surgery chemotherapy, that is surgery, removal of the tumor can be done, and again the person will be given chemotherapy so that the patient will not have any secondary effects. Next we will go to see that clinical investigations continue to search for an effective chemotherapeutic regimen. So the medications that they give here is like chemotherapeutic regimen, medroxy, progesterone and testosterone have been used as hormonal therapy. Okay, but that effectiveness has been limited. Its effectiveness is not of that value. Okay, then immunotherapy, immunotherapy like replacement can be done. So that holds some promise in treatment of renal cancer. So they say that it helps in the treatment of the renal cancer, and then it is also followed by good food and drug administration for treating renal carcinoma. So radiation therapy, chemotherapy, surgery chemotherapy, and then chemotherapeutic regimen like medroxy, progesterone and testosterone. As hormonal therapy it is given, then immunotherapy also is given, then good food and drug administration for treating renal cancer is important. Next we will go to nursing management. So talking about the nursing management, we see that preoperative operation or preparation of the client have renal surgery. So you know that, right? So all the preoperative care, consent, skin preparation, nil per oral, anesthetist consultation, okay, and then the surgeon consultation, okay, and then increased fluid IO chart should be maintained, how much of IV fluid should be given, everything has to be done. Then to ensure adequate exertion of waste products before surgery, give emotional support, psychological support, reassure the patient, show them somebody who has underwent the surgery and how they are recovering. The client may be anxious not only about the surgery but about the post-operative renal function, whether it will function or not. They will have all this stress and anxiety in them, and possible recurrent of the disease if the remaining kidney functions adequate. Assure the client that his kidney can meet the body's needs. So give assurance telling that he will be doing well after the surgery. Then post-operative care, you have to do assessment. So here we will monitor the client's vital signs frequently, check the vital signs frequently, watch for any manifestation of bleeding or hemorrhage. Bleeding may be through the incision or internal. Sometimes it can happen internally, sometimes it will happen outside. So we have to be very careful to see. Internal bleeding, hemoglobin also will reduce when we do the hemoglobin test, right? And then spontaneous pneumothorax occur occasionally after nephrectomy. When the nephrectomy is done, patient might have pneumothorax, blood pooling into the lungs. Monitor for this complication by assessing for sudden shortness of breath. If person is having dyspnea, then we have to be very careful to assess if he has developed pneumothorax, and loss of breath sound will be there on the affected side, on the affected lung. Okay, there is no breath sound, so that has to be assessed. Now talking about the intervention, So what do we do? So liberal use of opioids, okay, so including patient control analgesic. Opioids are also given to reduce pain, and external mechanical support to the chest and abdomen with pillows, hands help the client to perform deep breathing and coughing exercise more effectively, so that the patient does not enter to acidosis or alkalosis, making sure that he breathes out okay properly, does breathing exercises, coughing exercises, take out all the give him pain medication. Opioid should be given, and encourage him to do post-operative medications. An incentive spirometer provides immediate feedback about the effectiveness of deep breathing. So incentive spirometer, 3 balls will be there. You should ask him to blow in and blow out. Make sure that all the 3 balls go up, so that helps in the lung expansion, and it also prevents any complication that would be related with the lungs. Pain may be reduced by opioid analgesic, including the use of patient control analgesia, and proper positioning. Epidural fentanyl or morphine sulfate can be provided effective analgesia. So when you give this fentanyl or morphine, patient is a sedative, okay, patient will also go to sleep. So if respiratory distress is there, then we avoid giving fentanyl or morphine sulfate. Okay, next we go to clarify the doubts, explain. So if the patient is on epidural, it is also important that we look out for the signs of hypotension. Patient's blood pressure will fall, so that also we have to be very careful. Clarify the doubts, anything you can educate them, listen to them carefully, show interest to solve his or her problem. That itself will bring down the level of anxiety in the patient. Okay, so this is all about the renal cancer, which is almost, we have seen benign, and then classification, what are the etiological factors, pathophysiology, stages, clinical manifestation, diagnostic finding, medical management, nursing management, under that pre-operative, post-operative interventions. Okay, so in the next video we will continue with next topic.